Do not track has long suffered from a chicken and an egg problem. First, you need to know what tracking is. Then you need to build a mechanism to respect consumers' wishes or to block trackers. This chicken and egg problem has prevented people from really thinking about how to implement Do Not Track for years. But we're starting to see movement on the chicken front and on the egg front. One thing that CDT has worked on is coming up with a definition of Do Not Track, because there's no widely accepted definition of what it means to track in the Do Not Track context. CDT's definition goes as follows. We feel that tracking is the collection and correlation of data about the internet activities of a user, computer, or device over time and across non-commonly branded websites for any purpose other than fraud prevention or compliance with law enforcement requests. We think that this definition should be a good guide going forward.
Great. So the first question we're going to address is from Alex Howard, and he asked, how has the FTC's Do Not Track mechanism evolved since it was first proposed? And it was proposed in 2007.
That's right. Back in 2007, CDT, along with other public interest groups, proposed what we then called a Do Not Track mechanism. The idea behind this mechanism was very similar to the idea behind the very popular Do Not Call mechanism. We suggested back then that the FTC collect a registry of the domain names that track users across the web, and then provide this registry to users who wanted to integrate it into their browser and use it to prevent tracking. But the idea or the mechanism behind Do Not Track has really evolved over the past 4 years. Now it's more distributed, like the nature of the internet. The idea is that browsers will build in tools that let users either select domains to block, tracking domains to block, or that allow them to express their preferences not to be tracked.
So it still has some commonalities with the more commonly known Do Not Call registry, but it's also very different.
Right. The philosophy is similar. Users should have control. But we're really talking about the collection and use of information as opposed to seeing ads. Users would still see ads with Do Not Track. The ads just wouldn't be based on data that's been collected as they've browsed completely unrelated websites.
Great. Okay, so the next question is from Ryan, and he wanted to get your reaction on the Stanford Security Lab's early results on Do Not Track compliance.
So the Stanford Security Lab has done really great work. They looked at the members, the advertising networks, who are members of the self-regulatory NAI, Network Advertising Initiative, and checked out how many of these advertising networks were complying with Do Not Track and how they were treating consumer opt-outs separate from Do Not Track through the opt-out mechanism that the NAI offers. What they found was that two network advertising initiative companies, two advertising networks, were actually complying with Do Not Track headers, which was really impressive. When a user through Firefox said that they didn't want to be tracked, these two companies were saying, okay, we won't track you, and setting an opt-out cookie. What was really disappointing was that the study found that a large percentage of the NAI member companies were still collecting data about users, even as these users opted out. So they were doing as they had promised and no longer serving behavioral ads to these users, but they were still collecting their data. And this suggests that self-regulation isn't going to be sufficient to give users real control over whether their data is collected or not.
And the next question comes from Adam, and he asks, if Do Not Track, like the V-chip, fails to achieve more than 15% uptake, would our organization favor additional regulatory steps? And I guess we should probably first address what the V-chip is.
Sure. So the V-chip was a technology mandate from Congress that required that all TVs build in a certain technology that would give parents control over whether their kids could watch certain content. It was widely considered a failure, in part because the technology really wasn't robust enough. With Do Not Track, we see a real difference. We feel that Congress shouldn't be telling companies how to build their technologies, but should simply be saying users need to be given choice. Now, you guys, you're the smart ones. You figure out how to give users that choice. As for the question about the adoption rate, I think it's really important to emphasize that CDT doesn't ultimately care how many users choose the Do Not Track option. We want users to have the right, if they so desire, to browse the web anonymously and to not have their activities tracked along unrelated websites, as long as the users who want that option have it. we're happy.
So it's really it's having the option that's important. That's what we care about. The people that want to use it.
It's about having
the
real
ability.
choice.
Right. And so the final question we'll address is from Andrew, and it's a great question. So what's the over-under for do not track or other privacy legislation or regulation being passed or enacted before the big 2012 election?
It's such a typical DC question. It's really hard to say. Clearly, Congress has been busy with a lot of other things lately. What we do know is that pretty soon we will be seeing a privacy report from the Federal Trade Commission and a privacy white paper from the Department of Commerce. So we expect to see a lot of continued activity around privacy, and we expect to see companies making a lot of moves as it relates to privacy. Whether we'll get the baseline privacy legislation we want by 2012, who knows?
All right, great. And thank you all for your questions, and we'll see you for the next Ask CDT.